YouTube, I've got a sickening, horrible case coming from Baltimore, Maryland. Now, before I get to the story, you guys know I like to go to the courthouse, get the court files, go through what happened. Well, when I went 2 hours all the way to Baltimore, the files were sealed. And I look at all these. These are all case files I've got for different other cases, which, I'll make videos on. But when these were sealed, I was like, what the crack is this? And it turns out that this story is about the death of a child, supposedly in the name of the Christian religion. Now, I do pray to God. I'm somewhat religious, I guess. If you are Christian, please don't be offended. This isn't a video that's supposed to be offensive, because when I'm reading the story, I don't see any tenets of Christianity in here. So please take that into consideration. Now, in 2006, Ria Ramkissoon, she was persuaded by a friend to join a household, and this household was run by a woman called Miss Queen Antoinette. Ria was told that this household, she can join it, she can devote herself to Christianity, she can look after her son. His name was Javon, and he was at the time. Now, Queen Antoinette, her name was actually Tony Sloan, and she ran the house with very strict rules, which she said were based on biblical principles. As time passed, the rules multiplied and became a lot more restrictive. Eventually, all members were required to give up their personal possessions, which include their identification, as well as contact with their family and friends. And you'll notice that in other cults, right? Like, people would join a cult, when they're embedded in, they're then forced to cut off the rest of their own life, with the exception of Queen Antoinette, her daughter Trevia Williams, and her chief aide Marcus Cobbs. No one could leave the house unless they were accompanied by another member. Now, Queen Antoinette, she claimed that God spoke to her directly, and failure to follow her rules would lead to damnation. Now, it's easy for me to sit here and say, well, if someone told me God spoke to them, I wouldn't even ask for proof. I would say, shut the fuck up. But if you've got a household of people who believe this woman, who are listening to this woman, there has to be some kind of either a mental breakdown, or maybe they were yearning for something else in life, that Queen Antoinette was the one that just gave them attention. Either that or these people are just stupid, innit, bruv? So, early one morning in 2007, Javon, at this point, who was around 16 months, he refused to say amen during breakfast. So they were eating, and you know how you say amen, to close the prayer? Well, 16-month-old child, surprise, surprise, didn't listen, and he refused to say amen. So Queen Antoinette, she told the others, this child, he's possessed by a spirit. He has the spirit of rebellion. No, bitch, he's only 16 months. What do you expect? She then said that God told her that the way to clean his spirit, the way to purge him of this evil, was to deprive him of food and water, until he said amen. Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not, but that is just stupid. Like, God, the creator of this wonderful world, is really going to be bothered about a 16-month-old saying amen? Whether you believe in religion or not, it doesn't matter. Just think about it. It's just dumb, innit? So as time goes on, the baby cried from hunger, and Queen Antoinette told everyone, don't feed him, ignore him. Now, Ria, she became so distraught over her child that Queen Antoinette told her daughter, Miss Williams, right, now you look after the child. This is your child. Because she knew that Ria would disobey and then eventually feed the child. As the days went on, he whimpered, he grew weak, and when Queen Antoinette finally relented and she said, yeah, you can go feed the baby, well, at that point, it was too late. When it became clear that Javon was on the verge of death, he was returned to Ria, and then eventually died in her arms. Now, after he died, Queen Antoinette, she told everyone in the cult, get on your knees and pray. Pray for his resurrection. She said God would bring Javon back to life, but only if you and he had enough faith. As the days passed and Javon's body started to decompose, the only person who remained next to the body was his mother, Ria. Now, Ria, she was so indoctrinated. She waited and waited, and she said to Queen Antoinette, Queen, why hasn't my baby resurrected yet? She was genuinely waiting. And you know what Queen said? I know this is stupid, right? And Ria has a lot of questions to be answered for, and I'll come on to that. But Queen Antoinette said, he didn't come back because you were not a good enough mother. And Ria believed her. And I know, there are much bigger questions, but that in itself, Wow, that's so messed up. Now, the cult members eventually moved to Philadelphia, where Javon's body was stuffed in a suitcase and then put inside a locked shed. And then, once they hid the body there, the group eventually moved on to New York. Police investigators discovered the body more than a year later. And this all started back in April 2006, when Rhea decided to go to a park. She asked her mother to drive her to a park with her son. She packed a few outfits for him, a few outfits for her, and she also had her diaper bag. And that's when the cult members met her and then drove her to this cult house. And this is when Rhea, she stopped answering her phone, she turned it off, and she handed it over to Queen Antoinette, basically signing her life over now to this, stupid cow. Now, it was said in this cult that a lot of people did get sick, as you do, cold and flu and whatever, but Queen Antoinette refused them to go to a doctor in case, they would speak out. It was also reported that Queen Antoinette did not like Javon from the beginning, and from the beginning she started to plant seeds of doubt into Rhea regarding her child. Now, I don't care who you are, how can you be wary of a 16-month child? It's not going to do anything. Later, when Rhea was spoken to the police, she said that during her early days in the cult, Queen Antoinette would keep telling her, "There's something wrong with your child. He has a rebellious spirit." And from Queen Antoinette's point of view, this makes sense because according to her, the only way she could cure this rebellious spirit was, to make the child go through a fasting period, which eventually led to his death. And it was even to the date of the trial in 2010, Rhea still was waiting for her son to be resurrected. She received a sentence of 20 years, but it was all suspended. During the trial, she testified. As part of her plea agreement, she testified against Queen Antoinette, her daughter Trevia Williams, and Marcus Cobbs. She helped secure convictions of all three of them. They were convicted for second-degree murder and child abuse neglect. And part of her agreement, Rhea was then driven to a residential treatment facility where she would be held indefinitely. And with Rhea's insistence, the court said to her, "Well, if your child ever is resurrected, then we will put on the record that you were found not guilty." Now, you may ask yourself, why did the court agree that if the child comes back, then she is found not guilty? Well, according to the law, they had no other choice. If her religious beliefs are correct and the child resurrects, it would be legally appropriate to ensure that she had a fair trial. And that would be fair if, according to the law, she's allowed to withdraw her guilty plea and be found not guilty. I mean, it's so trivial, but I found it interesting anyway. Now, at that time, to the media, to the police, it was clear that the most culpable person in all of this was Queen Antoinette. She was the leader, and she ordered people to withhold food from Javon. Now, I've never been in a cult myself, but I can't for once imagine how Rhea could sit there and let her child starve to death. I mean, I can see Rhea saying, okay, yeah, punish the child, right? I mean, it's not good, it's not right, but in a way, I can see her being like, okay, yeah, for 5 minutes, let him calm him down, whatever, right? But to sit there and allow the child to starve, I'm sorry, Rhea being allowed to be let off per se because she testified against others? Nah, she should have served time. I mean, it was said at the time that the court's first priority was to ensure that Queen Antoinette was convicted of some murder charge and felt the full extent of the law. And in order to do that, it was necessary to obtain eyewitness testimony, and that's why they gave Rhea this plea deal. Now, what's interesting about all of this is it was said that the police officers that spoke to her and the psychiatrist that evaluated her, they all concluded that she was genuinely indoctrinated. This was not necessarily her fault. She went through classic brainwashing techniques into a cult. It was said that she had no malice and no ill will towards her son Javon. In fact, she believed that Queen Antoinette was genuinely acting in his best interests. And she did say that she was distraught herself seeing her son in distress. And when her son died, she prayed for weeks and weeks and weeks, begging for his resurrection. And the police, as well as a psychiatrist, decided that this wasn't someone that was acting out of classic criminal intent, rage, revenge, or jealousy. Rather, a mother who is facing anguish over a lack of action in saving her son. And one of the reasons why the court found her, not necessarily criminal responsible is because her delusions were of a religious nature and they were shared by other people. Therefore, this could not be classed as a mental disorder. And given that she was subject to this long-term inpatient treatment facility that she had to go to, if she doesn't complete it, then she would have to spend 20 years incarcerated. Now, I'm a father myself. Ria is the same age as me. And as I conclude on this case, I think to myself, well, back in 2010, I was, in my mid-20s. You put me in my mid-20s, you put me in a cult, there's no way that a woman or a man is going to come to me and say, God told me to tell you this. Like, I'm not even that smart. I'm just another guy behind the screen talking shit. But even I'm not that gullible. Now, I could be wrong, and I may be being insensitive, right? But Ria, for me, has a lot more to answer for than simply, oh, I just believed her too much. But why don't you guys comment? Am I being too harsh? Let me know.